Order, please. Regular meeting of the Joshua Basin Water District Board of Directors for August 20th was now in session at 5 o'clock, 1700. Please join me in the pledge of flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all. Thank you very much.
Kathy, would you mind muting until we get to that section? We're getting a little bit of feedback, I think. Perfect, thank you.
Termination of a quorum. General Manager Johnson, a roll call, please.
President Flowen,
Present.
Director Fick,
Here.
Director Jarlsberg,
Here.
Director Short.
Here. And Vice President Doolittle is excused absence. All directors are present in the boardroom. There is no request for remote participation. We have a quorum. Approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Voice vote. Those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Open approved. This designated time is for members of the public to provide comments on any district-related matter, whether appearing on the agenda or not. Under provisions of the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. At the discretion of the board president, comments on a particular agendized item may be deferred until that item is heard. Do we have any public comments? Oh, there's Ray.
Oh.
General Manager Johnson, is there a written, electronic, or voicemail public comment?
None to my knowledge.
Thank you very much. Public comment time is now closed. Consent calendar, item 5. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial to be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. If a board member or anybody else would like to handle this item separately, it will be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. We have one item on the consent calendar. It's the draft minutes from the board meeting of August 6, 2025. Does anybody want to remove this item from the consent calendar? Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
A motion.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Jane. We have a motion, voice vote. All in favor of approving the consent calendar? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We have no item 6 that is vacant. Discussion action calendar. Annexation interest, 29 Palms Water District parcel, presented by Sarah Johnson. Introductions, please.
All right, thank you. Tonight we have Matt Strag, General Manager for 29 Palms Water District, to discuss a parcel and located within our district boundaries that 29 Palms Water District owns. If Matt, you'd like to take the lectern.
Thank you. Board President, members of the board, I just want to thank you for the opportunity for me to present our case today. There is a parcel that the 29 Palms Water District has a reservoir, and it's in Joshua Basin's boundary. So today before you, the district is asking for us to go to LAFCO with an annexation process. The parcel is a sole source reservoir in our 2080 pressure zone. And the district has owned this parcel from October for 27 years. Just give you a breakdown of the parcel. So the parcel is on for the 29 district, it's on the southeastern boundary corner. We provided some maps. I don't know if you guys were able to get them. But there is a map I think that Sarah has as well provided in the presentation. So In 1987, the district was granted deed of the property through Ross and Hazel Stockwood. So the Stockwoods owned the property for many years, and the intention of this property was to install an 883,000 reservoir for the 2080 zone for 29 Palms. The district in 1988 started construction on the reservoir, and it is called the Stockwell Reservoir. In 1989, the Stockwells recorded a 99-year ground lease with the 29 Palms Water District, with the lease ending in December 31 of 2088. 9 years later, the district went into with the Stockwells and purchased the property. So the district has owned the property for 27 years. And today before you, I think it's a pretty easy annexation, and I'm here to answer any questions and kind of as good neighbors, understand the process of starting this annexation process. With that being said, I'll take any questions.
Director Fick?
Well, as long as there's a promise of no other development other than the reservoir, and I see the access road pretty much goes right through everything you got. As long as there's no more development on that part, I would say yes, go ahead.
Director Jonesberg?
I have no objections, and I think it's interesting that we're going through this process, kind of learning about annexation too, which is.
The district in 29 Palms just did another annexation. We had an individual that was not in the boundary, one lot away that needed a water service, and we went through the annexation process last year. We just added that 40 acres to the parcel. It's out by Dick Dale's runway. So this is just another annexation project that's kind of like a cleanup item. The district has owned it for a lot of years, and just trying to get that service area recorded into our boundary.
Great.
We like cleanup.
Did Ray do this? Did
What?
Ray do this when he was with 29 Palms?
Right.
No. Ask him, he's right there. No, he said. Casey was laughing. Director Short?
No, no questions. I do appreciate the transparency on this, though, to come with us first with it. So thank you.
Well, and I think learning from the annexation process that we did with the private customer, they always want to see us kind of working together, not working against each other. So at least a year of me learning through that process has definitely made our approach to you guys easier for me to come here and say, hey, this is just a cleanup. The district doesn't have any intentions. And I appreciate that the president of the board and Sarah met with the director Coghill and myself, President Coghill, just to understand that we were just trying to clean this up, and this should have been done 27 years ago.
Citizens Advisory Council Chair, David Carrillo, do you have any comment?
I think it's good. I think that it being above board and everything, that's great.
Kathleen Radnich?
You guys are all cool, we know that, but as the years progress, if you have that parcel over our aquifer, will you have the right to put a well over it at some future point? Because we are importing water, you are not. So that could be a source, not you, you would never do that.
No.
But could that happen with an official LAFCO annexation of that parcel?
Mm.
Plus,
So I think what you're asking is, do we have intention to drill a well? on the
no,
property?
you don't, because you're cool, but you're not here forever,
Mhm.
neither am I, but
But I will tell you this, knowing water and knowing how you drill wells, you're not gonna drill wells on a mountainside. We are gonna hit bedrock right away. We aren't gonna produce water there. And in 29 Palms, I don't know if that's part of your guys' unadjudicated basin, but 29 Palms is an unadjudicated basin where we do have a fence. So if that is also part of the Joshua Tree unadjudicated basin, I could drill a well today if we really wanted to. So there's no intention. It is really to clean this up and just make sure that our infrastructure is protected. One of the things I read through going through the 27-year files is that we are subjected to property tax because it is not in our boundary. So that is something that I don't want to see show up all of a sudden. And also the water availability as a public agency, I don't want to see us have to pay if we get it into our boundary. So those are some of the intentions as well.
And I'll just add on, it's a great question and a concern that, we also talked about during our meeting. Just because the district boundary is there, doesn't mean that's where the aquifer ends. The aquifer ends far into 29 Palms. There's a whole aquifer map online that you can see where those boundaries are. And it's way into 29 Palms. So that boundary is an arbitrarily drawn boundary, land boundary, but it has nothing to do with the aquifer.
And you really want to pull from water and groundwater where you know good water's at. Not necessarily there's horrible water constituents there, but 29 Palms is known for some of the stuff in the water. So our ideas of pulling are in different areas where we know we're going to get clean water because we don't want to go through the treatment processes that we would have to. So not an intention at all, and just really trying to be transparent as we start the LAFCO process.
I should have mentioned that Kathleen is our community outreach person. She's a consultant for the district. She's been here for over 40 years.
Yeah.
I had a little
Follow-up?
Yeah, well, you mentioned on the edge of the mountain, but what is the elevation there? I'm just curious.
Well, if it's our 2080 pressure zone, it's a great question, by the way, because I should know that elevation. But 2080 is in the elevation of the 2080 pressure zone. I don't know it from base elevation and then what we feed. So that reservoir, a lot of people think reservoirs feed the closest house next to it, and that's not necessarily the truth. We've got a pressure zone split only about a neighborhood down, where even if the district expanded, we need tons of infrastructure, and with a pressure zone split, water has to come from under the highway. So 2080 pressure zone is where I'm at. True elevation there, I'll get you an answer. That's a great question.
Okay,
It varies though, because it's the slope.
yeah,
It goes from the south where it's high and it comes way down. So if there was a well
Right, right.
possibility, it would be probably near the lower end of the 80
Right.
plus acre property. I'm kind of curious about standby fees, which we would be minus about $1,400, I think,
Right.
in standby fees. And standby fees are established with a formula. And so we would no longer get the standby fee from this property. So, but to be ready, standing by, we have to have infrastructure up there. So is the standby fee for the neighboring properties going to be affected in any way by this?
I don't think that's the case, and the standby fees for Ready to Serve, which we're never going to serve 29 Palms Water District, and there's no infrastructure close by either. So, we don't have to put in the infrastructure. There is a loss in revenue for standby fees, but I think will be mitigated by not having to serve that parcel as well.
Okay.
Even the closest parcel we took a look at for Joshua Basin, you guys are still closer in that closest parcel with infrastructure. So again, it wouldn't be trying to get another parcel next to us. And I kept saying 2080, it's actually the 2800 pressure zone, if I didn't say that correct. So, but yeah, we're just here to be transparent, be good neighbors to each other, kind of go shaking our heads, kind of been through this with the one gentleman that we worked with, and it was a smooth process. The district will accrue all fees. So the 29 is looking to take on all expense in this process. There is some expense for us. And really just want to be good neighbors.
And I'd like to say thank you for coming to us, because technically you don't have to, and it is neighborly to do that. So I appreciate that transparency and walking through this conversation, and you promised to take care of the administrative part, which I say thank you, and for the fees as well.
Well, what's you folks have a relationship with the city, and does the city have an oar in the water in terms of doing anything with the property or telling you what to do? They shouldn't, because they're separate.
And to be honest with you, they won't probably be part of the annexation. It's something I definitely have talked to Stone James about, the new city manager. He is anything that we are trying to work very close together. But anything like he supports us going after the parcel because our infrastructure's on it. He hasn't mentioned that he would want to put the boundary for the city any bigger either. So it's a conversation that needs to be had through the LAFCO process.
That's all of them.
Just to address, I think David, Kathleen, and Jane asked about what you might potentially do on the property in the, not you, but the district in the future. And so what, there is this, it's a two-part process with LAFCO. It's the sphere of influence application and then the actual annexation part, whatever that's called. That might be it, I'm not sure. And they would be done almost simultaneously. My point is that these applications are specific as to the use of the property. And LAFCO, for empowering you to do this kind of stuff, annex this property, they're going to ask some specific questions about its use, and you're going to have to write that down. And if there's any changes in those conditions, you're going to have to tell them about it. And they're going to have a whole list of things and questions to answer because you just went through this, so you know.
Yeah.
It's a whole list of things that accessibilities, it's just a whole bunch of them. And so
It's a process.
we're going to want to read that. But is one of the things I'm getting at. And also too, that it lends credibility to what you're saying now, but this thing where you may not be the one with an ambition to do something with the property 10, 15, 20 years from now, but still it's going to have to go through LAFCO. And
So I'll give you an example. The private owner one had to make sure that he was single family residence. He couldn't do multiple, or he would have had to gone through a different CEQA process. He couldn't go commercial. So you're exactly right. They're going to make me define what the use is. And we have no use up there. We're not gonna, and if you've been to that parcel, we built the road in 87 or 86 strictly for that reservoir and the pipeline that goes up there. It's not a very big parcel. Yeah, most of that parcel is in wash, actually.
yeah, I think I saw that in the picture.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, I'm good with it too, because it isn't just talking. There's going to be paperwork on this with specific information. So,
Another side.
oh, go ahead, please.
Have you been in touch with LAFCO recently? You're aware of the split recently? Yeah, Southern California LAFCO is now on their own. We just found out about it Monday.
No, I didn't hear about that. San Bernardino County LAFCO during the process. Go ahead, sir.
Well, no, San Bernardino County, LA and Orange County, I think, are the ones that are kind of split off of from Sacramento.
Okay, well, I'll reach out to the executive officer, Samuel Martinez.
Apparently it's fairly new. That's why I was wondering if you were aware.
But they are aware that this was another annexation that we were looking into. And we'll make sure that we're still with the right group as we ask the LAFCO.
Sure you will, yeah.
So I think, general manager, we're in a position that LAFCO is they're going to get a communication from us about us supporting this or not, because that's usually they'll ask the owner of the property, that is going to be annexed. Well, that's them.
Yeah, there will be some communications. Matt's going to lead the way on this.
So there's a detachment part of the application because the district will be detaching part of their district. And there will be some, you guys will have to verbally say, in a letter, that, yeah, we're gonna detach this lot. But for the most part, it's a fairly simple process. It's a long process. The first LAFCO process that we went through is about 10 months just to get it through everything. And this one will probably be a little bit longer. I've got to get some engineers involved to get things surveyed and, pay my application fees and my LAFCO fees. But yeah, I don't see there being a big hiccup. They already kind of know. LAFCO is aware that this was something 29 was looking at, but we wanted to come to Joshua Basin first and get everybody's approval before we stepped on toes and made sure that we weren't being good neighbors to each other. So it's kind of where we're at.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. This was for informational purposes only. No action will be taken. Thank you very much. You can escape from this place anytime you want to, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Good point.
Item chromium 6 compliance alternatives analysis presented by. Was David supposed to say something about the last one, by the way? Okay. Presented by Sarah Johnson, General Manager, with introductions, please.
All right, very good. As you well know, we have been working with Jacobs Engineering Firm and West Coast Civil on a chromium 6 analysis. We've spent about 6 months in that process. And so tonight we're bringing you the conclusion of the work that's been done. And just another shout out, thank you to Director Fick and Vice President Doolittle for the meeting with US Water Alliance, because it helped fund this project that would have cost several $100,000 otherwise. So it's been, I think, a fruitful project. We've learned a lot along the way. And so tonight I'm going to introduce to you Kathy Rosinski and Michael Wayne Plum. And also we have in person Kyle McCarty from West Coast Civil. So Kathy, I'll let you take the lead.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for having us discuss this important project in front of the board. My name is Kathy Rosinski. I'm with Jacobs. I'm the project manager for this project. My colleague Mike is a senior technologist in water treatment. So he'll talk more broadly about the technical aspects of the project. We do have a presentation we'd like to share with you, if that's okay.
Please do.
That's great. I'm going to ask my colleague to share that.
So I clicked share, but are you guys able to see anything?
No, yeah.
Not yet.
Let me try again.
It's starting to load now.
Okay.
You can see your desktop, Mike.
All right. Let me see if I can switch this to, there you go. You should see full screen now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. All right, so we're here to give you a briefing on this project, on the evaluation of options for chromium 6 treatment for the existing well sites. Next slide, please. So very quickly, what we want to talk about with you today is I'll go over the project objectives and approach, kind of how we went about getting to the endpoint. We'll talk about the regulations that are applicable in this case. And then we'll discuss the alternatives evaluation. So how we accomplished the screening of technologies, developed alternatives, costs, and so forth, and our recommendations and next steps. Next one, please. So overall, the objectives of this project were to evaluate 3 treatment alternatives for the removal of hexavalent chromium. The objective was to meet a California maximum contaminant level that was established in 2024. We considered 3 technologies that are kind of at the forefront of what would be applicable in this case, specifically reverse osmosis, ion exchange, and a technology called reduction coagulation filtration, RCF for short. And in our evaluation, we considered, the technical aspects of the technology, but also social and environmental aspects of implementation of this technology at your districts. Specifically, what impacts these solutions will have on your community, on your water supply, on traffic, on all the things that your community cares about. And finally, we also developed preliminary construction cost and operation and maintenance cost estimates to allow you to better understand what it would mean to implement these technologies from the standpoint of capital cost, as well as, the ongoing O&M costs. Finally, I want to acknowledge our partners in this project, specifically district staff, who was very generous providing information and giving us insight into how the district operates, into the existing facilities, and help us understand sort of what a solution for the district would really look like. What are the important factors that need to be considered? Also Water Alliance, who provided funding for the project, and finally West Coast Civil, who are our partners on this project. Next slide, please. And just really quickly, before we get into the meat of it, I wanted to give you a quick overview of sort of the process that we went through. So starting with, gathering information, coming out to the site, talking to the folks on the ground, understanding how the district operates its systems, what's the water quality, and so forth. That was the first step. We moved then to evaluation of the technologies. As I noted, the 3 technologies on the table were looked at in fair bit of detail. We reached out to suppliers to get an understanding what it is that they can provide us and so forth. And then based on that, we formulated 3 alternatives that were then evaluated in more detail. Specifically, one of the aspects that we were asked to look at is compare centralized versus decentralized treatment. And Mike will talk a little bit more about that later on. And then finally, we developed the alternatives. And what I mean by that is to provide a concept of what it would mean to implement this, each of those alternatives in terms of, specific improvements, buildings, pumps, systems, and so forth, so that we can then develop cost estimates for each of those alternatives. And then the last step was to evaluate that based on the preliminary conceptual process sizing and so forth. We looked at a broad range of criteria, scored the alternatives, looked at the benefit versus cost, and based on that, formulated our recommendations. There was one other requirement, compliance plan, that the state required to be submitted, and I believe that was completed a few weeks ago. Any questions on that before we get into the technical aspects of this project?
Hearing none.
All right. So Mike will go through the technical components.
Thanks, Kathy. So just one more slide before we dive into the technical aspects. From a regulatory standpoint, I think most of you are familiar. There's been, I'll call it a saga in terms of the hexavalent chromium regulations in California. So we're just showing the latest framework right now. So as of 2024, the California State Water Board Division of Drinking Water, they established a state maximum contaminant level for Chrome 6 of 10 micrograms per liter. And for smaller public systems like Joshua Basin, the compliance schedule is 3 years from 2024. So the compliance needs to be in place by October 1st, 2027. So as Kathy mentioned, there are compliance plans that are required to be submitted to the state board. And that was one of the activities that we supported. So on the right of the slide, what does that mean for Joshua Basin Water District? Well, in terms of water quality, the wells that are existing and in place, they have had reported levels of Chrome 6 in the range of 25 to 35 micrograms per liter. And that's publicly available data in the consumer confidence reports that are issued annually. And in terms of the compliance plan, as we mentioned earlier, that task was already completed just a couple weeks ago in July. So the existing wells that are impacted, it's all of them. There's 5 wells within the system. They're shown in the map on the right geographically, and the left provides a table that lines out each of the wells, the capacity and the respective pressure zone that they're located in. And so you can see that the wells, they have a capacity range between 700 gallons per minute up to 2,000 gallons per minute. And those wells are in place to meet the average daily water production and demand for the system, which is on the order of 820 gallons per minute. So one of the things that Kathy mentioned earlier was that in formulating the alternatives, we were asked and scoped out specifically as part of the study with Joshua Basin and the Water Alliance to look at centralized or decentralized and centralized treatment. So I'm just going to go over what that means. And so we'll focus on decentralized treatment, which is that second column on the screen. So for decentralized treatment, it means that the treatment solution would be implemented at each of the individual well sites, so all 5, and the size would be based on the individual wells that the system is installed on. That would require for each of the treatment systems to be integrated with the existing well, the existing disinfection and tie-in facilities. And in terms of what that does to the overall system reliability and redundancy, it's really the same overall system reliability and redundancy because the treatment is at the 5 individual wells that are already in place that the district is able to turn on and off to meet demand. Other considerations, so construction impacts for decentralized treatment is really limited to the individual well sites. For Joshua Basin, there is, as you guys all know, there is a consideration for what the impact is on the actual Joshua trees. And because these are all existing well sites, decentralized treatment really would have minimal impact on the Joshua trees because the treatment systems would be installed within the confines of the existing facilities. So when we were looking at this, it was identified that the last 2 items were especially important for Joshua Basin. And so that was part of the consideration when we compared decentralized versus centralized treatment. So centralized treatment, in contrast to decentralized, it basically is what it says. It's a single central treatment system at a single well site. That system would be sized for the demand, which means it would be overall, from a capacity standpoint, smaller than the sum of all the decentralized treatment options. Same thing as decentralized, you would have to integrate the new equipment with the existing facilities and disinfection and tie-in points. But the main difference is from an integration standpoint, pipelines to bring the water from all the individual wells to the single centralized site would be required. From a reliability and redundancy standpoint, because you're moving everything to a single site, that new treatment plant does represent a change in terms of the reliability and redundancy paradigm. It means it represents a single point of failure, which can be accommodated. It just means that that treatment plant needs to be very robust. In terms of the impact on Joshua trees, So because of the pipeline construction, unlike the decentralized treatment approach, the centralized treatment approach would have a higher impact on the Joshua trees, which means that would need to be mitigated. So when we were doing the initial screening, what it was an alternative formulation, what was determined between the project team was that a single centralized facility for all 5 wells was going to be very challenging and not feasible just because of the length of pipelines that would be required. So what was carried forward was to look at what we call a hybrid option, which I'll show just in a second, but basically it means there was a centralized facility, but it wasn't for all 5 wells. It was for 3 wells, and then the 2 remaining wells would have to have a decentralized treatment system at those locations. So just to put what we just talked about graphically onto a map. So the decentralized treatment, this is a zoom in of the 5 wells, and basically at each of the 5 wells in green, what you're seeing is a new treatment facility at each of those 5 wells. The hybrid option is shown here, also a map. The light blue shows the centralized treatment location, and it basically is a centralized spot at well 14 that would treat water from well 14, but also the water from the 2 closest wells, which would be well 10, if you can see my cursor, and then well 15. And then the pipelines are shown in that kind of maroon color. This is just preliminary routing that West Coast Civil came up with. And then the other 2 wells, which are further from well 14, well 17, and well 16, those would have individual wellhead treatment sites shown in green. So this alternative, we did evaluate it. It ultimately was not recommended. And the reasons are shown here. It was because of the overall reduced system reliability and redundancy. So even though you still have, 3 different sites, the collective consensus with district staff was that was still going to be less overall system reliability and redundancy than if you had a treatment system at each of the 5 wells. And the other main reason that alternative 3 was not recommended was because of the concern with how the pipeline construction was going to impact the Joshua trees. And so in the subsequent slides that I'll be reviewing, we're going to be focusing on the 2 alternatives that were developed around the decentralized treatment. Any questions before I continue?
Hearing none.
No, I would,
Right.
most of the wells are in areas of the community of Joshua Tree where Joshua trees aren't. I don't know how many Joshua trees would actually be affected by this. Is there an actual survey of all this all done?
So there isn't.
Because, east of here is hardly any Joshua trees.
It's just one point of concern. It's not the point of concern, but there could be some Josh trees, and a census would have to be done regardless. So that's just one point, though, not the full point.
Okay. Well, I would like to see the numbers on the hybrid if pipelines have made it for the 2 of them, the combination of the 3 and then the other 2 combined with a pipeline, pipeline along Sunfair is pretty easy to do. So that would be my concern, was the balance between the hybrid and the cost of the facility to treat chromium-6.
I think we'll get into that a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay, so we talked about decentralized versus centralized treatment. Now I'm going to cover really briefly the treatment technologies. So previously we listed 3 main technologies, which are shown here in bold: reverse osmosis, nanofiltration. The second one is reduction, coagulation, filtration, RCF. And then the third one was ion exchange. And for ion exchange, there's several types of ion exchange that could be applied to treat chromium-6. And so as part of the initial screening, several of the technologies were, we looked at them, but they were screened out. And the primary reason that they were screened out, I'll go through each one, is because of the residuals that are generated from these treatment approaches that would have to be disposed of. So for reverse osmosis, it's a membrane treatment process. It is effective, but it does produce a brine concentrate waste that has to be managed. So typically that would be discharged to a sewer or to evaporation ponds, both of which I think are limiting. That technology also requires chemicals for membrane cleaning, and those chemicals would have to be managed. For RCF, it's a filtration technology at the end of the day, but that filter does need to be backwashed, and the backwash residuals from that RCF system, again, would have to be disposed of. And typically that would go to a sewer, or you might have drying beds on site to take those solids, let them dry out, and those solids would eventually have to be hauled out. For ion exchange, there's multiple types. The first type that's shown is an ion exchange approach that includes on-site regeneration. And what that means is you have on-site regeneration facilities with salt. There's a salt solution that gets generated to regenerate the ion exchange media, sort of like a home water softener. But that produces a high salinity regeneration waste, again, that has to be disposed of either via the sewer or the evaporation ponds. And from a sewer standpoint, the existing system that's in place is a septic system for the district. And so there is no sewer network for any of these residuals to be disposed of. And so for those reasons, that's why those were screened out. So the remaining technologies that we have on the table were the two different types of ion exchange. So there's strong base and ion exchange with roll-up moldable regeneration. So basically it's like that first ion exchange technology, except instead of doing the regeneration on site, the vendor provides a service where they bring a truck with the regeneration solution. They perform the regeneration, they collect the waste, and then they, as part of their service, they haul the waste off and remove it.
Why you were laughing?
You don't remember the story behind that certificate?
Uh-uh.
That you left it in my window?
No.
You left it in my window earlier this year. And I was there for a long time, and
Is you please mute?
Is that Debbie? Oh, it is.
You forgot that?
I didn't hear any of that. Was it relevant?
No, it was not.
Okay.
Okay, I'll keep going.
That's hard.
So weak base anion exchange, it's another type of ion exchange media. The difference between the WBA and the SBA is that it's a single-use media. So you use it, once it's spent, it gets hauled off. There's no liquid. In both cases, there's no liquid waste that requires disposal by Joshua Basin locally. And so that's what we have shown in the green. Waste streams and spent media are hauled off for offsite disposal. Okay, so a little bit more deeper on ion exchange. So what is it? It's basically a media that's engineered. It's made up of microbeads or resin. There's a picture of it. It looks kind of like quinoa. There's different types of resin that are engineered to absorb different types of constituents. And they can be, as I mentioned earlier, they can be single use or they can be regenerable. So common applications that many of you may be familiar with are on a household basis. If you know anyone or if you have a water softener yourself, what they typically put in those vessels next to someone's house is a type of ion exchange media. And in the case of a water softener, usually the people who have those, they have to buy some form of salt, either a sodium chloride salt or potassium chloride that you can pick up at Home Depot. And that's what's used to batch up the regeneration solution. On the municipal scale, the systems look a lot bigger. They can be used to, as I said, to remove different types of constituents. So they can be used to soften, just like the home water softeners, except on a larger scale. They can be used to remove nitrate or arsenic, or if you've watched some of the films on Netflix, they can be used to remove PFAS, what they call forever chemicals. That's what's shown in the picture on the right. And they can also be used to remove chromium-6. And the last thing to note in terms of ion exchange and really other treatment technologies is point of use systems are not acceptable by the Department of Drinking Water. They really do want and require treatment systems to be put in place at a larger scale. And that's really because there isn't a way for the state to regulate households on an individual basis and enforce that requirement. So the two alternatives, as I mentioned, we looked at 3, but the 2 we're focusing on today are the decentralized alternatives. So there's basically one alternative for each of those media types. So the one that is called Schramm-based anion exchange with roll-up regeneration or mobile regeneration. And then there's the weak-based anion exchange with media replacement. So just think this one is mobile regeneration, and that's why we have the truck shown. And then this one is single use. So what would the treatment look like at each of the sites? So the treatment system between the 2 alternatives is actually quite similar. The process equipment would include a pre-filter, so a cartridge filter or a bag filter, just to take out any large particles from the individual well sites. And then you would have ion exchange pressure vessels that are arranged in a lead lag configuration. And all that means is you have 2 vessels that are in series. One does the work, and then the one in the back end is a polish bed to make sure that when the first one is spent, what gets sent to the public is still clean. And then in order to maintain the proper pressure to pump through these systems, a inline booster pump station could be required to ensure you have adequate pressure beyond what the well pump can provide to make sure the whole treatment system works. And the main difference between the 2 alternatives is the one that does the mobile regeneration. There's some special connections that are on the valving, which are shown here, that are required so that if you bring in a truck, you can do all that regeneration activity on site. On top of the process equipment, there would be some electrical controls and instrumentation. And as with any project, there would be some site civil work, grading, and yard piping. So when we came to evaluate the 3 alternatives, there was a matrix that was created with different goals and goal statements that are shown here. So we had criteria for public health. We wanted to make sure that we understood how each alternative would provide safe drinking water. Public safety, we want to make sure the community is protected and safe, and not just the community, but district staff. Sustainability, in terms of improving efficiency and sustainability of the water treatment and conveyance. We want to make sure we're hitting environmental goals to improve environmental and groundwater resource stewardship, and also economic goals to ensure that the district is being a good steward of the public resources. And for each of these alternatives, we assigned scores, and then we weighted those scores. And the total maximum score was 150. So here are the scores. And for many of the goals and criteria, it was very close between the two alternatives. You'll see right here for public health, for sustainability, for environmental, for economic. For those criteria, it was very similar. And the primary difference was really public safety. And the reason for that is one of the main differences between these two types of ion exchange is that the one that's single use, it requires chemical addition, acid on the front end and base on the back end to make sure that it's an effective process. So it will only work if you add those chemicals on the front and the back end. And because of that potential exposure to the public from delivery of chemical trucks and just having the chemical on site, this alternative scored significantly lower for that specific goal. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kathy to talk about the cost and the final slides of the presentation. And Kathy, you're on mute.
Right, thank you. Oops. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mike. Conceptual level cost estimates were developed for the two alternatives to better understand what it would cost to actually construct these projects. What we have on this slide is information on what goes into a construction cost estimate. First, I want to mention these are class 4 cost estimates. What that means is that the level of accuracy is based on very preliminary information, and the cost estimate is within plus 50 to minus 30%. So the number that you're seeing could be within that range. Construction cost estimates include all that you would anticipate would go into a project, labor, materials, equipment, and things like, any improvements to the site that are required to integrate that new treatment process. We're including your typical markups that a contractor would include. You can see 15 and 10% allocated for overhead and profit, allocation for mobilization, contractor mobilization, demobilization are essentially allowances that are added on. There is a 30% contingency in the cost estimate that accounts for many things that we still don't know or are uncertain that will be developed as the project development continues and more details are confirmed. It includes market adjustment factors, taxes, and so forth. That's what goes into the construction cost. In addition to that, we've also estimated the non-construction cost of project implementation. So things like engineering services during construction, permitting, and so forth. And you can see on the slide the allowances that were provided for those components of project implementation. The capital cost is effectively a total of those two costs. Are there any questions on that?
Is 30% contingency, is that kind of industry standard?
Standard, yeah.
Yeah, it would be pretty typical at this point to add about that much. You know, sometimes it could be more, sometimes less, but 30% is pretty typical.
Deputy Josford?
Yeah, this is only getting it built. It's not maintenance afterwards, right?
Yeah, we'll get
That's
to
correct.
We're gonna get into that. Okay.
That's correct. Yes. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So this is a summary that kind of compares those two alternatives side by side in terms of those relevant criteria, like our evaluation score, construction cost, and the annual O&M cost. So you can see that construction cost to implement the first alternative, which is the decentralized option with roll-up regeneration, is about $50 million capital cost. For the decentralized option, that cost is pretty similar, you know, around $54 million. In terms of operating costs, our estimate is at around $1 million to operate that alternative one system with roll-up regeneration per year. This includes cost estimated for the services of media regeneration and any kind of you know, ongoing maintenance, labor, and so forth that may be needed to run those you know, those 5 systems. For alternative 2, that cost is around 1.7 million. That includes, you know, now you don't have the roll-up regeneration service. Instead, you'd have a service to come in and replace that media. So this is a cost for a third party to come in to take the old media out and put a new media in on a periodic basis, as well as the cost of chemicals, as Mike mentioned, that are needed to provide preconditioning before ion exchange treatment and then post conditioning after the ion exchange. So you can see what the net present value is for these two options. That's a total cost of construction as well as O&M over a 20-year period. And then what we did is we calculated what we call the benefit cost ratio, and that's just basically dividing the evaluation score by the net present value. Alternative 1 has a higher benefit to cost ratio, which means that you will get more benefit per unit per unit spent. What I also wanted to mention is that, again, keep in mind these are high-level costs. The costs were developed to compare those alternatives. We are working on refining those costs for the preferred alternative. And also, in terms of the O&M costs, important factor in confirming those costs will be pilot testing the media. And what that entails is, you know, testing specific media types with your specific groundwater to determine, you know, how long that media is going to last and how often that media replacement or regeneration will need to take place. Any questions?
Hearing none. Well, David?
Well, I was curious what this cost of a treatment facility is.
The cost of the treatment facilities that is shown here as the construction cost. So that's the, you know, $50 million estimated construction cost.
So that's five facilities?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so So they're 10 million for each facility?
About.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what does the cost of a pipeline between 17 and the one north? Pipeline between those two, what would that cost?
We did develop those costs and we have them somewhere. We can pull them up to give you that information. Just give us a second.
Well, then the pumping would go up too, then.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider. It's not just the pipeline.
You know how to choose.
And is it more or less than this 50 mil?
It's less, but not a lot less. And there's a lot of negatives to it. Kathy, while you're pulling that up, do you mind if Ray takes the floor for a minute, talks a little bit about centralized versus decentralized?
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
Lisa, click off to the right so we see Ray. Anywhere in the gray, just click.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things that, when we talk about centralized or decentralized, and, when we focused on the centralized and talk about pipelines, as Director Johnson mentioned, that's just one element when we talk about centralized. The biggest issue you would have with centralized is operational flexibility. And let's just say you combine 2 or 3 wells into a centralized plant, and that plant goes down for whatever reason, then you're not able to produce water. So that really limits your redundancy and your operational flexibility. And that's one of the biggest deterrents when it comes to a centralized system. Yes, you could build a centralized plant with all the redundancies possibly built in to avoid that. But again, there you're going into more increased costs. So when we're talking about, when Director Fick, when you were mentioning the pipeline, earlier, again, that's just one element of it. But the biggest one, to my opinion, is that you're limiting yourself to operation flexibility and that redundancy that we mentioned earlier. So that's the biggest, like I said, deterrent to centralized versus decentralized, where you have a small system at every site. You're able to operate those wells individually, just like they are now, and go right into the distribution system. So I hope that helps.
And if you think about it, we've had wells offline since you've been here. We have 15 down, we've had 14 down in the
Right.
past, we had 10 down in the past. So, they're down for various reasons, for rehabs or whatnot. So not having that redundancy is a major concern for us. If we had 30 wells, centralized makes a lot more sense. But when you have 5 and one getting closer to end of life, it makes it a little more precarious to move toward a centralized system.
And you wouldn't build all of them all at once, would you? Would you do the best one first and then build?
No, we have a planned date of October 1st,
All of them?
2027 for all of them.
Oh.
So, but also remember, we're working on profiling well 15 currently. And if we're lucky, and hopefully we're lucky, we might find some better water quality at different depths on that well, which would reduce the treatment facility potentially and maybe change this whole strategy. This is hopefully a worst case scenario. We're looking for a lot of opportunity to reduce costs where possible, but also keeping our system sound and secure. Kathy?
Are we gonna hear from Kyle? What are we hearing from you? Yeah.
The only thing I would echo from what Ray said when we did the decentralized option, or the centralized hybrid centralized option, we're bringing 3 of the higher producing wells that are kind of in close proximity, closer to kind of the downtown area, right? And we're bringing all those together, and we're doing decentralized out on the outskirts, out on the east wells, right? If the operational flexibility that Ray was requesting and the redundancy we would need to build in the plant for that central one would be very crucial, because you really have the lowest producing wells out on the east, and you really can't move that water westward that easily within the system. So it does pose a substantial operational risk.
Kathy, you're welcome to go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we're in agreement that those those concerns are valid concerns that need to be considered here. And Sarah, would you like me to show the additional information for the other option?
Yeah, it's worth sharing, and it's good for the board to see that, we've considered all of these factors and talked them through very thoroughly, but I'd like you to see that work that we did.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before you get on to that?
Yes.
Is there any assurance that this mandate is gonna stay where it is right now and is not gonna be changed as we're trying to figure this out?
No.
And also what other mandates for other pollutants are gonna come up? It's like, we really should be looking at the whole picture, I think,
It's a
of potential. Not
That's a great
just
question.
one thing.
No, it's a great question. No, we don't have any certainty what will happen with the MCL. It seems as though the MCL is going to stay where it's at. There's some efforts to try to change it, but I'm not hopeful.
Right.
We still have to move down the compliance pathway. In regards to other issues for other constituents in the water, the one thing that we did ask in this system is it can be stacked. So if there were another constituent in the future that needed to be treated, the system can be stacked and added on to.
Oh, okay, like plastics.
And PFAS, yeah.
Well, fortunately, we've been tested for PFAS and we don't have that in our water. So we're one of the.
Well, we thought we
ones.
didn't have chromium-6 either. So
No.
they changed it.
We knew we had chromium-6.
Yeah, but I mean,
Water levels have been relatively consistent for a long term. It's just the level that the state is saying is acceptable
Right.
has changed.
right.
All right. So here's the information we're comparing. This is what you just saw on the slide. Alternative 1, the decentralized with roll-up regeneration. Alternative 2, decentralized with media replacement. And then here's the hybrid. You can see that in terms of benefit scores, alternative 3 kind of scored in between those two. I think the factors were just associated, a lot of the factors were related to additional construction outside of the boundaries of the individual well sites and what that means in terms of environmental impact, the time it would take for additional, permitting and mitigation. And then in terms of cost, you can see the net present value cost listed here. I hope this is not too small.
It is.
Did you say it is?
Yeah, it's a little small. I think the numbers don't quite match what we saw on the other slide. These might be the numbers before they were refined.
This is the net present value cost. Keep in mind, it's not the capital cost. So it includes it's all in for construction as well as operation and maintenance over a 20-year period. Yes, so this alternative does have, the lowest net present value cost.
$54.7 million.
Yes.
Next slide.
Any comments or questions?
This is for 10 years, isn't it? Didn't you say where
It's 20. They said 20.
Well, you said 20 on the other graph, but I thought you said it was 10 years on this one.
It's all based on 20 years.
It is, okay.
Yes.
So what's the total value of the Joshua Basin Water District?
The land value.
$300+ million.
Total asset value? Is that what you're looking for? I honestly would have to look. I mean, we have about 25 million in the bank with some of that about 5 to 6 million restricted, legally restricted. So, you know, and most of the rest of it is designated for specific purposes. But in terms of liquid assets, that's what we're looking at right now.
Everyone's in shock.
Yeah.
It's a very, very big number. We're all aware of it.
Yeah.
Shock too. It's a
Yeah, those are very big numbers. It is pretty shocking. I do want to again say that this is a, you know, high level cost estimate. These estimates would be refined as the project progresses. I would also say that, you know, district like yourself would want to take a look at available funding to help with financing projects like that through the state and so forth. Because, yeah, those are very, very large numbers. We do have some closing remarks just kind of on next steps as you think about, you know, what to do about this, how to execute this. So, you know, the next step really would be to just think about how to implement this project. So, you know, refine and optimize these alternatives. There is certainly, you know, a lot we could look at to kind of start looking at more details and refinement that can, you know, give you better confidence in the cost. You know, looking at project funding sources. So, you know, state revolving fund or WIFIA or other sources like that. Think about project delivery method. That is important because, you know, the time frame for implementation of this project is fairly short, even though these are, you know, fairly, I would call, you know, somewhat straightforward projects, just include, you know, incorporation of you know, those vessels. Still, a couple of years is not a lot of time to implement a project like that. So think about delivery methods that would be able to get this project in the ground for you. Again, look at permitting, confirm what are the permitting requirements, timelines, and so forth, and develop a comprehensive implementation schedule so that you can be sure that you can meet those regulatory guidelines. We did mention piloting, and I know Sarah and her team had talked to some of these outfits that provide the media. I think that would be a valuable exercise, again, in the spirit of refining, you know, costs for operation and maintenance of these systems. You know, how often does the media need to be replaced? That is a substantial cost in, you know, in associated with these technologies, either the regeneration or replacement, as you saw. So proceeding with those studies to confirm those process aspects would be important.
There's still a lot to be learned. We still have piloting that needs to be done. We still have the profiling at well 15 that is scheduled to be completed shortly. So there's still a lot to learn in a very short time frame in which to do it. So what I can assure you is that, you know, we're, the staff is going to work diligently to find the best way to do this that is the most efficient, most cost effective, that still gives us the redundancy that we need in our district. And we're going to be searching for, you know, the best way to pay for it. That's the scariest part for everybody. You know, we don't know those answers. The next agenda item addresses a little bit of that as a start, but certainly isn't the finish. So there's a lot more to learn. And the hardest part is this compressed time frame in which we have to comply.
David?
Yeah. Which David you're
Oh,
talking about.
Yeah, there's three of them.
So this treatment facility, well, now we have, if we go 5 treatment facilities, are the operators of this, is it 24-hour operation? Do you have to have personnel there all the time? Are they have to be trained properly? Do they have to have certification? Would they be outside contractors running this, or would they be in-house personnel?
All excellent questions. They're actually pretty simple. They are outside the well site. They look like sand hoppers right next to each other. Pretty simple piping that's put together. Our operators would be trained. And the reason we like SBA the most is because it's the least amount of dealing with chemicals. With
Yeah.
WBA, you have to reduce the pH, increase the pH, you have chemical handling, and that would require some additional training. This should be pretty much a plug and play. We'll have an outside vendor that will need to come and deal with the roll-up regeneration. Sure, Kyle can chime in better than I
I
can.
think that's Michael's.
Michael's. Michael, you want to talk a little bit about the process of SBA?
Yeah, and I think you hit most of the salient points. I think the key thing to understand is, you're adding treatment equipment to the site, but the vessels themselves, they're just flow through, right? So initiating the pump, that's already what the operations staff has to do when they need to turn on a well. The back end, in terms of making sure the water is disinfected, like that's all going to be the same. And when you do have to do a regeneration, the beauty of the SBA mobile roll-up regen is that the company that provides this service, they have been working with the state, and they have been working with the department or the Division of Drinking Water. And before any of their systems can be permitted by them, the Division of Drinking Water requires, they have special requirements for them to show that they're able to maintain that service, like on a continuous basis, like that as a company, they're not going to just suddenly collapse. The other thing to note is the vessels themselves. If you put in the SBA resin, if for some reason something does happen to the pricing or the company as a whole, these vessels can be repurposed with the other type of ion exchange media, which is for single use. So it does give the districts flexibility, but in terms of operations, the systems are pretty, once they are installed, they are pretty simple to operate.
We already proactively have several staff members working on their treatment licenses, so we'll have the staffing here that can operate if they need to. So
Then I think to answer the earlier question, it will not require 24/7 man of the system.
yeah, this is very
Michael,
different.
can you confirm that?
Yes, that is correct.
Very different than the 29 Palms treatment facility.
Well, mostly because 29 Palms has pH control, acid, caustic. Operators have to be there. We're a secondary lab. You pull samples all the time. So it's very different. Well, I understand the presentation. It's a great presentation. So interesting.
Okay,
Hey, Sarah,
Mike-
can I chime in when you have?
Ray, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
Mike, can you go back to that slide where you show, it's a slide that you have the tan vessels. It's a real picture of, yeah, right there.
Oh,
So here's a good example of a system that we're talking about, whether we're using strong base anion exchange or weak base anion exchange. This is probably a system that may be, what, 1,000 gallons per minute, I'm guessing, by the size of those
Yep.
vessels, maybe. The big difference between weak base and strong base, like we've been talking about, is strong base, you don't need pH adjustment. So you create a smaller footprint of the facilities that you need. Like that picture right there could be a strong base anion exchange that treats 1,000 gallons per minute. so you reduce the size of the footprint. When you have weak basin ion exchange, which requires a pH adjustment, like Mike was talking about earlier, where you have to add acid on the front side and a base on the back side, now you're increasing your footprint, you're increasing your capital cost, and you're also creating the hazards that are associated with chemical handling and storage. So when we looked at strong base and ion exchange, and if the possibility of doing roll-up regenerations is feasible, and I emphasize the word if, because there's still a lot of work and research that has to be done to that, then that makes that system more palatable to the district because you're reducing the footprint of the treatment, the equipment that you need. You're not needing chemical addition. Every process that we talk about here, whether it be reverse osmosis, reduced coagulation filtration, or an ion exchange, produces a waste, whether it be a solid waste or a liquid waste. But these two processes that we honed in on are most likely going to be the best for the district. But there has to be more work when it comes to that strong base and ion exchange and the roll-up regeneration part of that. If that becomes where it's a feasible process for the regeneration, then that most likely is going to be the best option for the district. But again, as we've been talking about, there's more work and research that has to be done in conjunction with the state when it comes to that process. So I just wanted to give that a little bit of information when we're talking about these two systems.
Okay.
The word pilot kind of concerns me. I did want to mention, I believe I've heard some of the larger districts are already doing this, and that there are systems already up in the state handling the mandate, but these are, LA and San Francisco, that kind of thing. So there is at least, you might consider them pilots because they're functioning already, but does a pilot mean that you might find out it's not working right, or is it just accumulating information?
That's both, isn't it?
It's a small scale version of that full size treatment system. All it is it's a small scale version to treat the resins and the process that you're looking to choose, and to make sure that's going to work with your water quality. There are some differences sometimes in the water quality that could impact the performance of the treatment, and that's why you do the pilot studies first before you do construct full scale. That ensures, that it should work appropriately with the water quality you have. And I believe now currently the state requires pilot studying before you choose a treatment option.
All right, thank you, Steve.
There's a book out there, and Sarah has a copy of it now, where smart people say that when you're doing something new, dip your toe in first. Don't overcommit to it. And a pilot study would represent a cautionary measure in an area that we're unfamiliar with. And so I
Is there the possibility of having to start over? As a result?
Not likely. Not likely.
So
you're doing all that now in the research and.
Not likely, but
that's
why
not likely. No. And I think pilot study in this case here would be valuable again to confirm your operational parameters, not to determine whether it works or it doesn't. So it's more of a refinement and really like honing in, maybe there's different media types, which media type is best suited, and confirm, how often, again, how long will this media last? What are going to be your long-term O&M costs, for either alternative, whether, on-site regeneration, how often that will have to happen, or how often that media needs to be hauled off and new media brought in. So that's really it's probably going to be the goals of these pilots.
And how quickly could we have the pilot up and running? This district.
We have
so go ahead.
We have to contract with the company to do it. We did get some quotes and it looks like it's gonna be about $60,000 per site for a pilot. So we need to figure out if we need to do it at every site or if we can do it at one. And roughly a 6-month process.
And one other thing, a couple things that are worth noting. So when we talk about doing a pilot, in the presentation today, we talked about the two different types of ion exchange, so SBA versus WBA. The thing to note is that if you're going to pilot SBA, there's multiple manufacturers who make different types of SBA media. So you can buy them from 3 or 4 different companies that make them. And so the idea of the pilot would be to test several different SBA products, and that data that's collected could be used to refine the O&M costs, but also be used to help at the time when you need to bid the project to get competitive pricing, right? So if you have data to show how one product performs over the other, that could help get you the best price from the various products manufacturers. I think the other thing to note is, Sarah mentioned that there's been some outreach by district staff to get pricing from the vendor, and there's always room to negotiate those types of costs with them, because if someone is interested in getting a full-scale system in, there should be some room to hopefully negotiate some of those costs so that it's perhaps more reasonable.
David?
Okay, I have 2 questions. One is, what is of the districts and water districts in violation of this 10 number? What is the average chromium-6 level? Are they 40, 50, 60, or are they 25 like us? And then the next question would be, in this water treatment facility, is it 0 chromium-6 or is it just under 10, 8, or 9?
I think the goal is to get below 7. And in regards to what other districts levels are, I don't have the answer for that. I mean,
They should.
have you seen that data?
We have a well that's affected at about 25 parts closest to Joshua Tree. TP2 at the treatment plant is 10 parts right at the allowable. So kind of just depends, but closest to Joshua Tree right around 20, 25 for us, 30-ish at our well 11B that we're doing some testing at right now. So
There was a range that was listed in the slides. I think it was at the beginning. 25 to 35. Yeah, top right there.
For us,
For us,
that's correct.
for you.
But for other districts,
I
Yeah.
haven't seen the ranges.
Right, yeah, for us, I know the range, but for outside districts, I don't.
Does this kind of imply that we need to get more customers? More development? I mean, where are we gonna get the money from?
If the operating costs are about $1 million a year, that's about $200 per service increase per month. Not per.
No, yeah.
That's doable, but
We do have 750,000 for annual operating costs in the current rate study already. So we've covered some of that cost.
Okay, that's good to know.
Well, I was pleased to see that this strong base is not requiring a lot of chemicals. On the bottom of page 13 on this staff report, it says SBA presents fewer safety risks for operators because it minimizes or eliminates 1 to 14 the need for direct chemical handling, making it safer and more straightforward option from a operations standpoint. But things happen, and it's a leak of some sort of acid because we're fooling around with our pH or something And not only would I be concerned about stuff that ends up on the ground, but also what is the term, aerosolizes, to where it gets into the air and we have a plume of some acid stuff going in a easterly direction with the wind. So and also too, I was kind of wondering if we were handling something where there's, we meaning even our vendor people that would be doing the stuff for us. Oh, I just lost my train of thought, sorry. Insurance. That's what I was wondering about. If we're handling hazardous chemicals, if we choose one of these other alternatives, if there could be a risk factor that we have to pay an additional insurance premium for it, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, there is a risk factor, that would be in the contract to reduce that risk and push it to the vendor. And, you know, through insurance that they'd have to.
That they're paying the premiums for that kind of a thing.
That we're essentially paying through rates.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
Yeah, that's true. Anything further from the board?
We have to keep it under 10,000 service connections, but we have room for a few more customers.
Between now and 2028.
Yeah.
Citizens Advisory Council, David Carrillo, the chair.
Owen, I see on the screen, it had like standalones. Is that the way it's gonna be here in the desert? Or are we gonna have a building around it?
All of those are still TBD. We ask those same questions. It seems that those facilities can withstand the heat and the direct sunlight. So we may consider a building, we may not. Just it depends as we move further down this process.
So that will also include the footprint in square feet, depending on what we're gonna need at the point, depending on the pilot program. Yeah, okay.
I do want to clarify that in our cost estimates and assumptions, in terms of implementation of this project, we did include a building around the vessels. And that was, you know, just driven by sort of what we saw at the existing sites where, you know, clearly the impact of the elements, you know, the sun on a daily basis, you know, some warrants, you know, a canopy or some sort of enclosure. So we did include a building for these vessels. You know, whether it's absolutely needed or not, that we could certainly explore that and you know, adjust. But that cost you saw includes additional building at each site.
Can I continue?
Yeah.
In that building, were you using cinder block or what kind of building were you putting around it, just so we know the media that you were?
I think it was based on a metal building, insulated metal building, something similar to what, you know, we saw at your existing sites of similar quality.
Thank you.
Does this include solar?
I mean, if there's a roof, solar could certainly be
That's what
installed.
I'm looking on the
in it.
canopy there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty small though.
Yeah.
You know, we also assume that a booster pump will be needed at each site because there is a loss of pressure as the existing well pump pumps water through the vessels. You know, the next step of evaluation, we'd want to confirm that whether a new booster pump would need to be added at each site, or perhaps the existing pump may be replaced or modified to accommodate that additional pressure loss. So again, like I said, refinement here may lead to some, you know, again, refinement of you know, the exact implementation approach may lead to some additional refinement of cost once you take a detailed look at how you want to implement these projects.
Anything further? Kathleen Radnich.
Sorry, we as we're dealing with, or I should say, collaborating and researching, I believe the low desert Coachella Valley water, one of them, and they had, I believe, a different process that we saw a lot of hope in. But I don't see it here. Is it that the state did not sanction that as a possible cure?
That's correct.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Okay.
Mm.
We explored every technology that was approved by the state.
That.
Mm.
I think I remember that. Is there a motion from the board to receive and file the chromium-6 alternative analysis?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, David. General Manager Johnson, a roll call, please.
President Fluen,
Aye.
Director Fick,
Aye.
Director Jarlsberg,
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion carried.
Thank you, Kathy and Michael. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate the
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Funding resolution, this is item C. General Manager Johnson.
So this is pretty much introduced in the last topic. The next step that we need to take is apply to SWRCB's FAST application for funding. There may not be funding. What they are trying to do though is tally up what the costs are across the water districts in need of funding, so they can hopefully include that in their intended use plan. We would like to apply for it so that we can get, on the list and we recognize that we need the funding. The payback, of course, can vary, and we'll bring that back to the board. We're not going to accept anything without the board reviewing what those the different opportunities that they offer are. It could potentially be some principal forgiveness. It could be a low income state revolving fund loan. So there's a couple of different options. We started the FAST application, didn't find it as straightforward as they promised it would be. One of the key components is to have a board resolution authorizing us to begin this. So that's what I'm bringing to you tonight. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Director Fick,
No questions. Go forward.
Director Jarlsberg,
Yep, I guess we gotta do it.
Director Short.
Yeah, seems like a no-brainer.
No brainer. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 25-1079 authorizing staff to seek funding assistance?
Okay, I'll second. But I'd like to read the resolution title into the minutes.
Talk about doing that. Find it.
I have it.
Okay, adopt, let's see, resolution 25-1079, resolution of the Board of Directors of the Joshua Basin Water District authorizing a representative to sign and file a financial assistance application for a financing agreement with the State Water Resources Control Board for chromium-6 treatment projects. Is there a motion?
You moved.
I'll make the
It's been
motion.
moved.
It's been motioned.
It's been moved.
What?
It's been motioned.
Yeah, before you read it. It's been motioned and seconded
What was?
before you read the resolution.
Short-term memory, General Manager Johnson, roll call, please.
President Fluen,
Aye.
Director Fick,
Aye.
Director Jarlsberg,
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
1-4, motion carried. Annual bad debt write-off, Director of Administration, David Shook, please.
Seems like now I have everyone's second favorite subject. Right, so the bad debt for 24-25 totals $45,786.06 across 157 accounts. This is a significant reduction from last year's historic $104,114, which followed the pandemic era non-shut-off policies. And this year's figure is only 80.3% of the approved $57,000 budget and represents just over half of 1% of total water revenue. So the recommendation is the approval of the 24-25 bad debt write-off. My name is David Shook, Director of Administration. Today is August 20th, 25. Just a reminder, like I mentioned last year, was a historic, non-traditional bad debt write-off year. You can see the past years there. I was considering a really bad dad joke here, which is why I have pictures of M&Ms. So I don't know if this is the right time to tell you all that I was once let go from an M&M factory from getting rid of all the W's.
Indeed.
Moving on. Okay, so like I mentioned, the budget for this year is $57,000, and that 46,786 is 80.3% of what was anticipated. And the bad debt accounts for, like I mentioned, less than 1% of total revenue. You can see on the pie chart there to the right. The number of accounts to be written off is 157. The unpaid balance is $291.62. And some interesting information. There are 157 accounts this year. Back in 1819, there were 208 accounts. The average then was $109. So it's interesting that the per person total is a lot higher. So we're kind of looking into what causing that. 71 accounts are locked basic fee accounts. There's no credit check for locked basic fees, which accounts for a large percentage of this total amount. In the red credit, that has the most there at 19,000. Yellow, just under 6,000, and in the green category, almost 7,000. So efforts to limit bad debt, we're continuously promoting the updated CAP program. We have had quite a few customers take advantage of the increases that the board approved back in May. So that's been helpful so far. Also, we've been promoting the Help to Others program. There was an increase to that as well. What's interesting is that we did have a customer receive the CAP assistance to the tune of 1/3 of their bill, and we're actually upset because it wasn't enough. So it's hard to kind of gauge how best we can help customers. So our defense here is 28 liens have been filed or collected in the amount of 26,000. So that's potentially limiting additional bad debt by that amount. So, and since the inception of the lien program, the district has collected almost 300,000 since that inception, and over 128,000 remains to be collected, subject to property transfer. We have a lot of ownership changes here in our district. And there's some nice donuts to maybe ease the brunt of this. So the annual write-off bad debt is required for the audit. Just a reminder there. Bad debt is an expense to the district and is borne by all the ratepayers. The proposed write-off of 46,786 is 80.3% of the adjusted and approved $57,000 budget. And please approve the bad debt write-off of $45,786.06. Thank you for your time. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Director Fish.
I'm still trying to figure out the difference between W's and the M's, M&Ms.
Turn it upside down. Turn it upside down, so that you end up throwing all of the M's away.
And then the liens, obviously, because of property transfer, I assume the liens are against the property itself, and then when it transfers, it's paid.
Yes.
That's probably the most effective way of getting that, I think.
It is, yeah, we have some more information on the next presentation as well. I don't do the liens myself, one of my supervisors does. And that the timing of those is, I think, what's most tricky, because there's a waiting period, and then when the property is changing over, it's hard to get a hold of the owner that owes that debt.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of changeover.
Director Jarlsberg,
No, no questions. Thank you.
Director Short.
No questions. I'm glad it's significantly lower than last year's though.
We're hopeful that this is not the new norm. We'd like to get it, well, zero, but
Right.
yes.
Can I just chime in really quick? As I was going through, looking at some of this in more depth, it dawned on me that this may be closer to the new norm because of SB 998, which basically doubled the period of time, the 1 month period of time to 2 months until we can cut off customers for non-payment. And so I think that is a big factor in what the new norm will prove to be. Oh, yeah. But a little bit of maybe good news, I don't know, some perspective. David and I talked about this a little bit too. The lot basic fees are the most problematic of the charges that, come into bad debt. But to put it in perspective, really, it's 3.3% of the revenues that they bring in. And so we're still gaining 389,000 by way of those locked fees, those locked revenues. So, it is worthwhile, but they tend to bring down the statistics. They make the statistics look worse than they really are for the rest of the accounts. Sorry. Thank you.
Is this noted in the budget anywhere? Are we estimating as an expense these non-payment things? I couldn't find it.
There's a bad debt budget. What did we say it was in this one? 57,000. Yeah. And this is going to be 80, just a little over 80% of it.
So if there's a subsequent payment sometime in the future, has that been noted in the budget as revenue, or is that something that's expressed in the audit?
If someone pays against the write-off.
Maybe when this property sells 5 years later or something like that.
Yeah, so we can only collect what we write off as bad debt, we can only collect for 4 years legally, but what we lien, we can collect as long as we have that lien in place. Liens expire after 10 years, but they can be renewed. So we have those secured. But as far as bad debt goes, we can only collect it for the next 4 years, basically. And we, sorry, I forgot where I was going to go with that.
So is it, when it is collected, is it revenue or is it just?
Oh, no, it actually goes back against the bad debt expense. It's not new revenue. It goes, it becomes a negative bad debt expense.
We'll skip that part. DAC Chair David Carrillo, do you have a comment?
I'd say let's pay it. Or write it off. Yeah, let's write it off. And that was a great explanation. Thank you. I like that we have it bottled up, and after 10 years, we could actually renew it, and you're keeping your eye on that. That's really good to know. Thank you.
Is there any public comment, any additional public comment? Is there a motion from the board to approve the bad debt write-off of $45,786.06 for fiscal year 24-25?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. General Manager Johnson, roll call, please.
President Flowen,
Aye.
Vice President, sorry, Director Fick.
Aye.
Director Jarlsberg,
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
She was missed tonight. Vice President Doolittle.
I've got to call her. Item E, collection methods. This is sort of related to the last one.
Yep.
Collection agency tax roll Leon. Director of Finance Ann Roman, in collaboration with Director of Administration David Shook. If you please.
Thank you very much. Yes, so this does lead right in from the last topic, and we try to do that intentionally so that, you know, we could make some sense out of these items. Let me go ahead and start my presentation here. There we go. Okay, there we go. Catch up. All right. So the district employs various methods of preventing and recovering delinquent unpaid water charges. Let me give you a little bit of background here. So to start, in 2024, last year, we, after having a very high bad debt year, a record year, staff recommended exploring the use of a collection agency to collect bad debt. Also in 2018, staff explored the use of county property tax rolls for collection of unpaid delinquent debt and was advised against it then by legal counsel. In 2025, staff again explored this option with legal counsel and was advised against it due to our locked basic charges. We'll get into that a little bit more later. The 2025 to 2030 strategic plan does request that staff review the current lien process and consider alternative policies and practices. And so that's what we're doing here tonight. I wanted to mention some of what we do now, which is we screen new account applicants for collectible bad debt up to 4 years old. And so that's what I mentioned earlier. We have 4 years essentially to collect on bad debt unless we filed a lien against it. Filing property liens through the county is another method that we use. And we also use owner agreements for tenant water service, which shifts liability from the tenant to the property owners. That process was introduced in 2020 and is still being phased in. It sounds like it's been a long time, but if the tenants haven't turned over, then those owner agreements have not been put in place yet. So if there are long-term tenants in place. So let's compare the methods that we've explored. So first of all, the collection agency, which was something that we thought might be helpful. But as we, and David can chime in here too, because he did all of the work with an RFP really that was requested by the board for a collection agency. And I'm glad we went through that exercise because we learned a lot about collection agencies in this industry. So this collection agency would be a mechanism to pursue debts that are ineligible for liens. And it's a familiar approach, I think, for ratepayers. Everybody knows and understands what a collection agency is and does. However, it is considerable effort for staff. And David talked with some other folks and.
Yes, I spoke with actually the person that does their debt collection. I won't say the name of the water utility, but it's in Southern California. And it's a considerable amount of work to not only extract the data from their system, but these agencies want it templated in a specific way. And if you don't abide by that, they charge you extra to do that for you. So in addition to the contingency rates that they collect, they will also charge for manipulating your spreadsheet to fit their needs. So there's no perfect design. All utilities use different systems, so there's no real template. We can extract the data from our system, but putting it onto a templated spreadsheet that is accepted by the collection agency is a whole process in itself and takes multiple hours every month to get that done.
And considering what the payback is, I think that's really the bottom line here is that what we learned is that the recovery rate is in the neighborhood of 12 to 18%. And that's before they take their commission, their contingency. And 20% was probably on the.
Very high.
Yeah.
One of the proposals that we got back from a collection agency referenced that the industry standard was 11%. Theirs happened to be for 1 year. It was in 2019. Theirs was abnormally high at 23%. And that's the one that cited the industry standard of 11%. So what we've learned and looked into is 10 is reasonable and 18% is probably not very realistic.
Yeah, so in an average bad debt year based on, I just averaged out from 17-18 through 24-25, and we would be looking at collections as low as $4,160 before the 20+% commission. And commissions, some of the commissions were higher than 20%, leaving the district with about $3,300 recovery for all of that effort to format the data for the collection agency. And of course, yeah.
One thing to add on to that, with the rates, one of them had 3 different contingency rates based on the age of the debt. So we would have had to manipulate our data even more. So if it's up to a year, it was, I think, 18%. If it was between a year and 18 months, it was 25%. And anything older than that, it was 30% that they were able to collect.
Right. Yeah, because debt does get harder to collect the older it is. So that would be the reasoning behind that.
What's the average debt per account?
The average.
How does somebody run up a $4,000 debt to this agency?
No, that's collectively. So this is based on the entire annual bad debt write-off.
Yeah.
If the average is 34,000, we could probably expect to collect about $3,300 from that bad debt overall. Uh-huh. Yeah. So it's not per account, it's for the entire bad debt list. So it's not very large, not a lot of money for quite a bit of effort.
So would barely, I don't know if it would even pay for your time.
Most likely not.
Yes.
Exactly. So this is not a recommended option at this point after we have done additional research on it. And of course, you know, it could have some negative public relations implications that we thought maybe not the best route to go. All right, so the next one that we looked at was the property tax rolls. And this was something that had actually been mentioned to me by Vice President Doolittle. And this is also a route that we looked at back in 2018 when my predecessor, Susan Greer, was here. And at that time, she worked with the legal counsel that we had, which is different than the legal counsel we have now. And it was not recommended that we submit our locked basic charges to the property tax rolls. And I did go through to review that with Jeff, our current legal counsel, and came to the same conclusion. This also would be an annual process that we would have to bring to the board, have a resolution. It works as a lien substitute only, so it only works for current owners essentially and no tenants. On our bad debt list, if you notice, there were quite a few past owners, so those would not be eligible for this. And the potential is also there for properties to transfer before that annual tax roll submittal. So that submittal would happen to the county on an annual basis in the summer. And in the meantime, those properties could transfer. There's also a concern that I had, risk of property loss for parcel owners through tax default sale. So the county will not accept partial payments Generally, you can do it through a very rare exception, but the county generally does not accept partial property tax payments. And so once we submit those charges to the tax roll, the parcel owner is obligated to pay that in full. And if they do not pay their property taxes for 5 years, they will be subjected to property tax tax default sale, excuse me. And there's a fee of $27.50 per parcel to remove any, in case of an error or any kind of situation that comes up where we have to correct or remove something from the property tax roll. And I'm going to get into some statistics about this later too, so we'll keep that in mind. Liens, which is what we're doing now, and this is really what I'm recommending that we continue with. We file these individually, at least monthly, sometimes more frequently, spreading the workload over the year. And this is important to us because we have not a dedicated full-time employee that does collections for us. It's a small fraction of our customer service supervisor's position. Liens are also secured more quickly than the annual tax roll submission. They're paid out of sale proceeds, so we rarely receive any pushback or controversy over those. They are generally paid through escrow when a property is being sold. And we also additionally are often able to collect unliened balances. So if we file a lien for $500, but in the meantime, that account has accrued more debt, we can submit that additional debt for payment to the escrow company, and they may or may not pay it, but we're very fortunate that most of them do. There's a $20 release fee that is recovered. We charge that to the parcel owner when we prepare the liens, and so that we, are able to have that covered by the time we release those liens. And the challenges really associated with this is that it's secured, the debt is secured against the parcel, but it's not paid until the property transfers, which can take years. So that is where we have that balance on the books of about $128,000 in liens. And that's constantly turning over. That's, new liens coming in, old liens being paid. So, there's a lot of activity there, but certainly there is time. It's a waiting game with the liens. So let's talk about how this applies to our statistics. In the 24-25 bad debt statistics that we just saw, 39 of 157 customers, or about 25%, and 44% of the debt, 20,350, were from tenants that could have been pursued by a collection agency. But again, remember the return from a collection agency, very low. 84 of 157 customers, about 54%, and 51% of the debt, 23,547, were from previous owners, which were not liens since they no longer owned the property, but they could have been pursued by a collection agency. Again, same issue though, collection agency return very low. None of this combined 79% of customers, or 96% of bad debt, would have been eligible for placement on the property tax rolls. Only approximately 21% of customers and just 4% of bad debt, about $1,900 in this 24-25 bad debt list, could have been submitted to the county property tax rolls. And this doesn't consider excluding those with locked basic charges. If we take those out of the equation, then we have even fewer, 20 owners and $539 that were unlocked eligible charges for the property tax rolls. So that is really the reality of what we're looking at. And conclusion here that I am drawing is that collections is not a primary task for us here at the district. We certainly take it seriously, and we understand that it's bad debt is an expense that's borne by all the ratepayers. However, we have to look at cost effectiveness as well. We could certainly do many, many other things if we had a full-time employee for that purpose. We do not, nor do I think we should. Return on investment for collection agencies efforts is anticipated to be too low to make the effort worthwhile. Property tax roll collections provide another potential tool, but the disadvantages warrant careful evaluation. Moreover, in keeping with a statement made in the 25 to 2030 strategic plan letter, the district plays a leading role in the efforts to extend a caring, compassionate hand to residents. And so staff recommends balancing collection efforts by methods that don't put ratepayers' properties at risk of tax default or tax sale. You know, I think of those customers coming in here and pleading to the board because those charges have been put onto their property tax, and you know what could happen. Staff recommends continuing and boosting existing collection methods rather than branching into these new methods. At this time, we'll always reconsider and you know review these practices year by year. However, since 2018-19, the district has collected almost 300,000 in lien balances. David mentioned this in the previous topic, and almost another 117,000 in additional balances through the lien program. So I think that's a pretty successful program in mitigating bad debt. It's not perfect, but it's doing a pretty good job, I think.
While you take a sip, can I talk more about,
Yeah.
about the RFP? So we had, the board requested us to do, send out an RFP to receive proposals from collection agencies, which we did that. We had a scoring rubric or matrix created. We put it out on a couple different, what would you say, prominent websites. And we got 5 entries back, which is I'm thankful for, because we were able to learn a lot. But we did learn the reality of, you know, there was a collections agency that we proposed last year, and they showed the shiny bells and whistles, and then we learned the reality of what 35 and 65% was. So on the debt from last year, we would have potentially been able to collect 65% if they were able to collect every dollar and cent from that. And they would have kept 35%. So that's the reality, but what it boils down to is that there's no way a collection agency is going to collect 100%. They're going to collect 11% or 12%. And then our fraction shrinks after that. So we did give it the full effort. I mean, it's been a year since that request was done. So we've done a lot of research. We had multiple meetings and went through it so we could come up with this potential improvement. So.
Right. Yeah, good point. So what I think we would propose to do is that we continue to improve our lien process as best we can. We also have talked about revisiting the guarantee deposit parameters before the next rate study, considering adding a deposit, potentially though smaller, for green credit checks. Right now, green credit checks do not pay a deposit. However, they make up a fair percentage of the bad debt because things can always change over the time that customers have their accounts in place if they're long-term accounts. So staff also intends to creatively explore other collection approaches, especially in regard to the locked basic charges, which are more inclined to become delinquent. One suggestion has been to send a letter to new owners who are being billed the locked basic charge, explaining the charge and the opt-out option. So we do have an option to opt out, which is not really a recommendation I would make, but I think it would be important for them to understand that they do have that option rather than just not paying the bill. Staff intends to focus more, David and I talked about this a lot. We intend to focus more on proactive approaches to avoid excessive debt. We've got the the CAP program improvements and, David's he's always looking into other options as far as customer assistance goes. And, even AMI could be a method to avoid some excessive debt, when it comes to leaks that are accumulating that debt without customers' knowledge. So that's really our proposed solution at this point. The fiscal impact here, while it would be challenging to quantify the full cost benefit of the various collection combinations available to the district, the ability for liens to be filed throughout the year makes the existing lien method both more fiscally secure and in the long term, and also more manageable for staff who have numerous competing priorities. Staff recommends continuing to use liens as the primary method to collect unpaid balances instead of using property tax rolls or a collection agency at this time. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Director Fick?
So for the bad debt, one account, what's the average of the account in bad debt?
Do we have that, 291?
Yes.
That's all I wanted to know. Just, I guess that's about three months of not paying water. There it is.
Director Jarlsberg?
Well, I think there's a saying, I can't think of it exactly, but something like, don't fix it, and don't try to fix something that's already working, so I don't see any reason to change either, according to your presentation.
Director Short?
No questions.
DAC Chair? Nothing? I appreciate you reading that part about the district plays a leading role in efforts to extend a caring and compassionate hand, because I was going to read that myself. I'd kind of like to see a little bit more space between the impact of COVID with 104,000 before recommending or considering doing anything else. But I'd like Jane says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think we're doing due diligence in trying to recover the money. I did have a question though. You stated that the county will only accept a payment in full for the property taxes. Does that include our addition to that too? It isn't just the taxes that they want for
No, it is a full bill. Once if you're referring to the other items that we collect via the property tax rolls, such as the CMM assessments or the what's the other one? Standby. How can I forget? The standby water availability charges, those become part of the property tax bill and have to be paid as part of that bill as well. Yeah.
So they're actually doing some of our work for us.
Correct. And they do it for 30 cents. Yeah.
We'll let this out.
Pretty amazing.
If there's nothing further, that was for informational purposes only. No action will be taken. Reports and comments, informational purposes only on subjects not covered by the agenda. The opinions of individual directors are not necessarily the opinions of the board or district staff. No action will be taken. The board may provide staff with requests for future agenda items. Director Fick.
Okay, both me and Director Charlesburg were at the BIA annual whatever they had, I can't remember. They've had it 19 years in a row. And they were very proud of the fact that they had it 19 years in a row. And a lot of the information applied far more to urban situations and housing, and they're praying for a 3.9 mortgage situation. This is mostly development BIA people, of course. And so, if you know my history, I've been 180 from that, but it's good to be in the club now. And I was, what they did, a major theme of it was how they're dealing with climate change. And in the climate change situation, they're building the houses differently. They're no longer making them out of wood shakes, roofs, and all that kind of stuff. And they're very proud of that. And then also, most noted, and Director Jarlsberg also saw this. They were going on, and there was a proprietary situation of calling Gila hydrant. There's a company out of San Diego that builds what they call a Gila hydrant, which is for helicopters which are the most strategic, and they use water. They don't use the big red stuff, but they use water, and they're far more productive in strategic dumping of water on fire. And lately we had what was called the Eureka fire in Joshua Tree National Park. And in that situation, they were having to fetch water from the Hawks Landing facility, which was not a huge travel, but it included about a 10-minute travel time for the helicopter. And so I was noticing that the Joshua Basin Water District has a reservoir strategically planted just to the south of the entrance to the national park on the west end. And if it did have a heli hydrant, the system has all kinds of things noted to it. It's roughly, I think, about a 5,000 gallon open cistern system that refreshes very quickly by being next to a reservoir. And it has Wi-Fi or whatever capabilities of being interpreted with the helicopter and the reservoir system. And so there's built-in conditions to this, and it's about $150,000. And I would be curious if the Joshua Basin Water District with the CAL FIRE and their helicopters, and I don't know how the National Park Service uses helicopters to put out fires in the national park, but I think it'd be worth it to both to Joshua National Park and to our water district, because our southwest corner of the water district is where the fires happen. We don't have fires or wildfires anywhere east of here or north of here. We have them to the southwest. And so I'd be curious to have our interim director of operations at least look at the facility and see, there's some videos about this. I can send them to you, or maybe I did send them to the general manager. And so have him look at that and see if it at all applies to our reservoir in the south end, and maybe another one, but that one is the one I would think would be very useful for the Joshua Tree National Park. So that's one thing I'd like to see. And then also Director Jarlsberg and us, or me, went to Monday night that we were at the CSDA meeting, and they had Site Logic, which is they were a little anti-woke. They were advertising the fact that they're anti-woke or conservative, and they were going on about how they do renewable projects for districts and a lot of water districts, and using solar and other installations too. And me and Director Welsh, I'll let her take that one. So that's about it for that part.
Thank you, sir. Director Jarlsberg.
What he said. Actually, the Site Logic guy on Monday evening was just advertising. He hardly even, I actually went to that meeting thinking that the title of his presentation was, well, I had it here a minute ago, was strategic strategy, looking into strategic plans more or something, but it was really an advertisement for his company. And like Director Fick said, he's rather conservative, and he made a point of doing that, saying that to us. But I did want to mention that there was a report on LAFCO, and that's where I found out that LAFCO Southern California is splitting off of California at LAFCO. Actually, they were quite excited about it, having their own place, or their, I don't know, building, or at least offices, and so that might be something to look into a little more. I haven't yet, but and then Chris from the CSDA was there to give a legislative report, and he's always really good. But he mentioned that they are in the midst, CSDA is in the midst of recruiting for committees. And if you're interested in being on one of the committees, they want you to apply by October 3rd. So I just want to put that out if anybody's interested. And for the last Friday's meeting that we went to was the Building Industry Association of Southern California, BIA. Just for the minutes, because they abbreviate all the time, so just wanted. And so they are, we know, we go there knowing it's going to be a building emphasis, but they tried to bring in a little bit about water because they knew a lot of people were there concerned about water. But most of the focus was for areas that have wildfires. But we did like that helicopter idea, accessing more local resources of water in the case of fires. The titles of the different talks were Building Resilient Water Systems, Future-proofing California, which I'm always looking for is, looking into the future, a water strategy to unlock housing and growth. And the speakers are very knowledgeable. All of them were really, really good. So I'm appreciate having gone to it. A little bit of it might have gone over my head or not been really relevant to what we're looking at here, but it was still worthwhile, I think. So. And then I'm headed Sunday to Monterey for the conference up there, and I'm looking forward to that too. And I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Director Short.
I didn't do anything fun since the last board meeting, so I got no comment.
I had a fun drive out to that, what do you call that meeting, Bighorn Desert View out there, the community
Flanders.
that they have. It was a fun ride out there. Unfortunately, we went on a day where they were closed.
Start on in August.
Thought along with speaking about Bighorn, I'd like to acknowledge Marina West, who's been monitoring the meeting tonight. She is the general manager of the Bighorn Desert View Water Agency. And she's also our director representative with the Mojave Water Agency also. She's been very patient and with us most of the evening. I also found in my mailbox something for a medical alert bracelet. And I just like to point out that I am actually only the second oldest person in the room. I don't know necessarily that I need to have that. General Manager's report, please.
All right, very good. So Monday, I went up to Apple Valley and met for the Urban Water Management Plan kickoff that's being led by the engineering firm Zanjero. I think they're doing a very thorough job so far. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. That will include our urban water plan and our water shortage contingency plan in line with the state regulations. So next spring, you'll see a presentation to the board and some public outreach that's required that we have to do. You may see a letter that goes out that's in that will include all of the agencies that will be sent to any of our community partners, letting them know that we're engaging in this process so that they can provide comments. Pretty soon, I'm going to be bringing a new purchasing policy to the board. As you know, we have a lot of projects ahead of us. Chromium 6 is one of them. We are outsourcing our pipeline for Belmont. We have, the A1 road rehab, amongst many other upcoming projects, and our current bidding policy, in my professional opinion, looks like a bowl of spaghetti. So we need to be just clear and having thorough understanding of how it works and what we're supposed to do. And Kyle has worked with me today, and we've talked about kicking that project off. So that will be forthcoming. The recharge pipeline that was hit by Caltrans subcontractor has been repaired. So we'll begin taking recharge waters pretty soon. And the next meeting is canceled right next to the weekend, so you get a nice weekend. And as Director Charlesberg stated, we'll both be at CSDA next week. And last but not least, I hope everyone noticed the exterior of the building is complete. All the rock work and mitigating walls that have been put out to help with rainwater is done. And it took a lot of effort, but not a lot of money. MWA funded most of that through grants. I think roughly 11,000,
Yeah.
10,000 was grant funded. So very, very small investments to make our building look a little more presentable and hopefully help mitigate some floodwaters.
Thank you to our field staff for working so hard this week to get that buttoned up. They did great.
And a special thank you to Ann and David for your last presentation tonight. I know that took a lot of effort. It's a year's worth of work that I think was well worth it to learn about the collections process for the district. It takes a lot of effort, and you get to present it in a very short amount of time, but don't realize how many hours it takes to get to that point in research. So thank you both for that. Thank you guys for sticking around. We don't have visitors often, so we do appreciate it. So that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Comments from the board? I did notice on the calendar, Morongo Basin Pipeline Commission. I was under the impression that disappeared.
It's tentatively scheduled. That's coming up in September, and it should be in Apple Valley. I talked to MWA about that may be one of the final ones for the commission until the new whatever it's going to be. It hasn't been fully decided if it's going to be a TAC or it's going to be some sort of committee. But there's still going to be, I think, at least one more. You know, my wish when I was talking to MWA was that, you know, that Morongo Basin still needs to have a voice, and it's good to have the meeting at least annually so that we, you know, can talk about any of the concerns when it comes to the pipeline or recharge waters. So I don't think there's been one for quite some time. So that one, to my knowledge, is still tentatively scheduled.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just one quick thing I've forgotten, and it's kind of relevant. I wanted to say I appreciate getting some new stuff that I can wear at this meeting coming up.
Oh, swag.
No, it's not. Well, maybe, I don't know. It just identifies me when I get to these conferences. That'll be nice. I'll fit in better. Thank you. It was in the minutes for the last minutes that I had asked about it, so I wanted to acknowledge it that I got it. So, thank you.
At this time, I will pause this regular board meeting for a closed session. It's listed as item 9 on the agenda. Upon completion of the closed session, the board will reconvene in chambers where any action will be announced. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all very much for consideration on our separate. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Just a little bit.
What are your board meetings?
Fourth Wednesday of every month. We adjust the December.
Okay, the board is back in session from its closed session at 7:58 roughly. Attorney Jeff, can you report out, please, on the results of the meeting?
Yes, absolutely. The board met in closed session on item 9 as agendized and took no reportable action.
Thank you very much. Future director meetings are noted at the bottom of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Second, please.
Second,
Those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for hanging out, Marina.
Thank you, Marina.
Maybe forgot to
You
turn.
bet. You guys have
Oh,
a
she's
great
still
evening.
there.